The storm rages, wind howled, rain lashed against the Grand Crescent Hotel. It was a night for staying in, tucked away from the tempest's fury. The old building groaned, its ornate facade reflecting the flickering gaslights like a distorted mirror. Inside, a fire crackled in the grand hearth, casting dancing shadows across the opulent lobby. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and aged velvet. A lone figure, dwarfed by the grandeur of the space, manned the concierge desk. A night at the Grand Crescent. Daniel shivered, pulling his cardigan tighter. It was an unusually cold December night, even for coastal New England. He glanced at the antique grandfather clock in the corner, almost midnight. Not a soul stirred in the grand lobby. Daniel sighed. Another uneventful shift at the Grand Crescent, a place steeped in history, whispering tales of bygone eras. He often felt like the curator of a forgotten museum, surrounded by echoes of lives lived and lost. A shadow at the door. It lingered there, almost as if it were contemplating whether to enter or not. The dim light from the street lamp outside cast an eerie glow, making the shadow seem even more ominous. The air was thick with tension, as if the night itself was holding its breath. A sudden gust of wind rattled the entrance, momentarily banishing the quiet. The storm outside was relentless, with rain pelting down and the wind howling like a banshee. The old hotel creaked and groaned under the onslaught, its ancient timbers protesting the weather's fury. It was as if the building itself was alive, reacting to the tempest outside. The heavy oak doors swung open with a groan, admitting a figure silhouetted against the storm's fury. The figure paused in the doorway, framed by the tempest outside, before stepping into the dimly lit lobby. Water dripped from the brim of his hat and the hem of his coat, forming small puddles on the worn carpet. The sound of the rain outside seemed to grow louder, as if protesting the figure's entry. Daniel sat up, alert. Guests were a rarity this time of year, especially on a night like this. The hotel, usually a haven of peace and quiet, felt different tonight. There was an unsettling energy in the air, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The figure stepped in, bringing with him the chill of the night and the faint scent of rain and something else, something akin to damp earth. His presence seemed to suck the warmth out of the room, leaving a palpable coldness in the air. Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary guest. The atmosphere grew heavier, almost suffocating. He was tall and imposing, dressed in a long grey coat that reached his ankles. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of his hat, but Daniel could see the glint of his eyes, sharp and piercing. The man moved with a deliberate grace, each step echoing in the silent lobby. Daniel felt a shiver run down his spine as the stranger approached the front desk. The air seemed to crackle with an unspoken tension, as if the very walls were watching. Room 314. The number itself seemed to hold a certain weight, a significance that was hard to ignore. It was just another room in the grand scheme of the hotel, yet it felt different, almost as if it had a story of its own to tell. A story that was waiting to be uncovered, hidden behind the door marked with those 3 digits. "Good evening, sir," Daniel greeted, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. The lobby was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that made you feel like you were intruding on a secret. The grand chandelier above cast a dim light, creating long shadows that danced on the marble floor. It was a silence that seemed to amplify every sound, every whisper of the hotel's old walls. A rather stormy one to be out and about, wouldn't you say? The rain lashed against the windows with a ferocity that seemed almost personal, and the occasional flash of lightning illuminated the darkened streets outside. It was a night that begged for the warmth and safety of indoors. The kind of night where stories of old seemed to come alive, carried on the howling wind. The man approached the desk, his face still shrouded in shadow. His movements were deliberate, almost calculated, as if he knew exactly what he was doing and why he was there. The dim lighting did little to reveal his features, adding to the air of mystery that surrounded him. It was as if he was a part of the storm outside, bringing its intensity and secrecy indoors. He placed a leather-bound suitcase on the counter, the sound heavy and final. The suitcase itself was worn, with scuffs and scratches that hinted at a long history of travel. It was the kind of suitcase that had seen things, been places, and carried secrets. Secrets that were perhaps too heavy to bear alone. Room 314, the man's voice was low and gravelly, sending a shiver down Daniel's spine. It was a voice that commanded attention, one that you couldn't easily forget, yet Daniel was certain he had never heard it before, which only added to his unease. It was a voice that seemed to echo from the past, carrying with it a weight of untold stories. He never forgot a voice, and he was sure he'd never heard this one before. Daniel prided himself on his memory, especially when it came to the guests of the hotel, but this man with his shadowed face and gravelly voice was a complete enigma, an enigma that seemed to challenge his very sense of reality. It seemed to emanate from the depths of the old hotel itself. The voice, the suitcase, the storm outside, it all felt like pieces of a puzzle that Daniel couldn't quite put together. As the man took his key and headed towards room 314, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to unfold, something that would change the very fabric of the hotel's history. Daniel felt a prickle of unease. Room 314 had been unoccupied for years, deemed uninhabitable after a series of incidents. He flipped open the guest registry, his apprehension growing. "I'll need your name and address, sir." The man simply stared at him, his face still hidden in the shadows. The silence stretched, broken only by the crackling fire and the incessant drumming of rain. Finally, the man spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "It's not important." Whispers of the past. He placed a single crisp $100 bill on the counter, a gesture that spoke of wealth and an indifference to its source. Daniel hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to refuse, but something in the man's demeanor, an air of quiet authority, silenced his objections. He handed the silver key to the man, watching as he turned and disappeared up the grand staircase, his footsteps strangely silent on the marble. Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a terrible mistake. The missing guest. The storm raged on, but sleep eluded Daniel. The strange encounter played on his mind. The man's face, or lack thereof, burned into his memory. He tried to rationalize it, to attribute his unease to the storm and the late hour. He glanced at the clock, 3 a.m. He decided to check the registry again, a sudden urge to confirm the man's details. He flipped through the pages, his heart sinking. The last entry was his own. There was no record of the man in the grey coat. The maintenance log. A record of every creak, every groan, every inexplicable event that had ever occurred within the Grand Crescent Hotel. It was a book that held the secrets of the building, secrets that many would prefer to remain hidden from the world. A cold dread crept up Daniel's spine as he thought about what he might find within its pages. The log was not just a record, it was a testament to the strange and often terrifying occurrences that had plagued the hotel for decades, a chronicle of the inexplicable. He reached for the old maintenance log, a hefty leather-bound volume that chronicled every repair, every incident, every whisper of strangeness within the Grand Crescent's walls. The weight of the book seemed to mirror the weight of the secrets it contained, secrets that had been accumulating for years. He flipped to room 314, his fingers trembling slightly. This room had always been a source of unease for the staff. Stories of strange noises, sudden drops in temperature, and inexplicable occurrences were common, making it a focal point of the hotel's eerie reputation. The entries for room 314 were numerous, spanning decades. Each entry told a tale of something unusual, something that defied logical explanation. The sheer volume of reports was staggering, a testament to the room's notorious history, each one more unsettling than the last. There were mentions of guests hearing whispers in the dead of night, of shadows moving where there should be none, and of a pervasive sense of being watched, an ever-present feeling of unease. Whispers of cold spots, strange smells, objects moving on their own. The staff had tried to rationalize these events, attributing them to drafts, old plumbing, or the imaginations of tired guests, but deep down, they knew something was wrong, something beyond the realm of the ordinary. And then, the last entry scrawled in a shaky hand. "Never open this room again. It is not safe." This final warning was a stark contrast to the meticulous entries that preceded it. It was a desperate plea, a final attempt to keep whatever lurked in room 314 contained. A warning that chilled Daniel to the bone. Daniel closed the book, his mind racing. What had happened in room 314? What could be so dangerous that it warranted such a dire warning? He knew he had to find out, but the fear of what he might uncover was almost paralyzing, a fear that gnawed at his resolve. Standing in front of the door to room 314, Daniel hesitated. The air around him felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay beyond the door. The maintenance log had only hinted at the horrors within, and now he was about to face them, to confront the unknown. An unsettling discovery. A sudden noise from the upper floors made Daniel jump. It was a slow, dragging sound followed by a soft thump, like a heavy piece of furniture being moved across a wooden floor. It came from the direction of room 314. Daniel's pulse quickened. He grabbed the heavy brass candlestick from the desk, his only weapon against the unknown. He took a deep breath and started up the grand staircase, each step echoing in the silence of the storm-ravaged hotel. What awaited him in room 314?